Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and continuing on with reviewing Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3. Now we come up to my fourth and final part review of Season 3. Yes, 2 episodes left, and man, I tell ya, these last 2 episodes and what is left in store for Season 3, they for sure, at least in my opinion, did not disappoint. They were excellent. Yeah. So yeah, episodes 9 and 10. Again, the last 2 for Season 3 of Strange New Worlds. And which being, Terrarium, yeah, and New Life and New Civilizations. So the first things I have to say about these last 2 episodes, well, like I said, they did not disappoint with what each of these last 2 episodes have to offer with their storylines. And yeah, because like with episode 9, we definitely have an episode that centers a lot on Erica Ortega's. And this is, of course, a follow-up to how she dealt with the Gorn and with it dramatizing her and such. What began this season and where we come to next, and with her struggles and all that, and on account of the Gorn, it's pretty interesting. And Star Trek has done this before, where sometimes we have an episode where it would have just, say, 2 characters, you know, in a situation where they're stranded and so on. So that's what's going on in this episode. And I recall, like, you know, one episode from The Next Generation where you have LaForge and a Romulan who have to work together, and the episode from season 7 of Deep Space Nine, Waltz, where, you know, you got Sisko and Gul Dukat stranded on a planet, but it's different compared to, say, like, you know, with what's going on in some of those other episodes where, yeah, because in the case of Dukat and Sisko, you know, they aren't really working together and all that, and Dukat just trying to show Sisko, you know, what kind of man he is. And of course, for any of you that have seen that episode, and for those of you that have watched and are fans of Deep Space Nine, so yeah. And, you know, there's been plenty of other stories like that in other shows. I mean, you know, in the case of, say, Star Wars, well, an episode of Star Wars Rebels where, you know, you've got What's-Him-Face and Zeb having to work together and all that. And, you know, eventually when they would come to terms and all that, just, I think you know what I'm talking about. It's pretty interesting. So that kind of stuff we would get sometimes. They're always interesting to watch, you know, like 2 allies, and they don't really get along, but eventually, like, if possibly, they would come to terms, and where they do have to work together. So, with what's going on in Episode 9 of Season 3, really interesting. And with the 10th and final episode, what a fitting title. I love that there have been episodes of Star Trek where they've taken the words from that famous speech, you know, Space the Final Frontier, these are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise, you know, that speech. Because, yeah, like, best example, the last episode of Star Trek Enterprise where it took the words, these are the voyages, and the fact that that was the worst episode of any Star Trek show, and for that having been the season finale of Enterprise, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh well, it's how it turned out. It is what it is. And other episodes that, yeah, some like using some of those words, but most prominently, yeah, because in the case of Strange New Worlds, taking those words, New Life and New Civilizations, well, and the fact that the show itself, you know, taking the words Strange New Worlds, and that being the title of the show, yeah. Yeah, not to mention that there was supposed to be originally a proposed Star Trek animated show back in the early 2000s that would have used the 2 words Final Frontier. Yeah, so to mention those examples, and yeah, because it's true. But with what the 10th and final episode of Season 3 has to offer, where, yeah, because it picks up where we last left off in one of the previous episodes that, you know, had to do with Ensign Gamble and also with what's going on with Patel still, because she got a sample of Una's blood, and with the Gorn inside of her, so much craziness that Patel has gone through, and what would happen in the 10th episode, those alien creatures and all that, the Vestas, they come back once again, and in the case of Gamble, man, that 10th and final episode, until I talk about some more, it was interesting. It was really good. A great way to close off Season 3. And until the next season. Yeah. But just overall, the last 2 episodes for Season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, they were fantastic. Without a doubt. All the above. Alright, so with the first things I've had to say about the last 2 remaining episodes of Season 3 done / out of the way, now of course, read the descriptions / the stories, and breaking down / diving in the episodes themselves. And of course, starting with Episode 9, Terrarium. Yeah, because try and say that 10 times fast if you have trouble trying to say that word. Yeah, Terrarium. Okay. Alright, description / the story. When Erica crash lands on a deadly toxic moon, where the chances of survival are slim to none, she finds herself stranded and forced to challenge her most closely held beliefs in order to survive. Alright, so to break down and dive in the episode itself, yeah, Terrarium. Alright, so the start of the episode, well, the USS Enterprise would investigate a peculiar area of uncharted space that is legendary for its tales of strange phenomenon. And in the science lab, Spock would perplex by the gravity waves that are presented in this parsec. Hope I said that right, yeah. And, and Erica, well, she plans to get to the bottom of the gravimetric validated by piloting a shuttle into it, yeah. And other than a number of unverified signals, yeah, well, Starfleet knows little about this region, and, they want to display a subspace monitoring buoy. And after declaring, "Let's light this candle," well, Erica would make her way to the shuttlecraft, Armageddon. Yeah, I'm saying that right. Yeah, because, yeah, obviously we've seen that shuttle before that goes by that name in Star Trek, because, Galileo and this one, nice. Yes, and lowering the Enterprise's blast shields and starting her survey run, yeah, because with what the Enterprise does and on account of the shuttlecraft, yeah. Well, the data is then transmitted to the Enterprise itself, but, however, a wormhole out of nowhere pops up, and yeah, and it pulls the shuttle that has Erica into it, yeah, into its maw, and the Archimedes would emerge on the other side of the wormhole. Because, we know the whole thing of how wormholes work in Star Trek. It could take you to another part of the galaxy. Yeah, because, like in the case of Deep Space Nine, and at times in Star Trek Voyager, there are attempts to get back home, and when, like, say, a wormhole is popped in. Yeah, those basics of wormholes, and how they work in Star Trek. But anyways, so, yeah, and with it being caught in the gravity well of a gas giant, well, Ortegas would then launch the relay buoy and broadcasts a mayday right before she would crash, landing on a small moon. And the lieutenant, she would awaken and see that, yeah, the shuttle is damaged, and would try to scavenge parts to make a water conditioner. Conditioner. Me sometimes. But anyways, then coming back to the Enterprise, well, Pike would host a meeting in the Ready Room, and where Spock would note that the wormhole has remained non-variant. Yeah, and for only nearly 2 days, and Uhura insists that a lack of debris could mean Erica could still be alive. And yeah, because not only does this episode center a lot on Erica, but a good portion on Uhura. And not to mention, keep in mind that, yeah, a good friendship between Uhura and Erica throughout the show, besties and all that. And there's no way that Uhura is gonna give up on Erica that easily. No, she'll do whatever it takes, However, they have not detected a transponder signal or any life signs for now, and with any indication that, if Erica had survived the trip, and, she could be anywhere in the universe, God knows where to them, and trying to reach her with a narrow subspace beam, well, that does fail, unfortunately. And as the wormhole's event, Horizon would keep reflecting the communications back. Yeah, that too. Well, then Commander Una / Number 1 would remind Captain Pike that they need to rendezvous with the USS Constellation for a delivery of vaccines for the colonists on Epsilon Indy 3. And I've heard that, and yeah, I've heard that alien species name before, and with the planet, Epsilon. Anyways, because yeah, I'm such a trekker, so, Alright, but anyways, so, through the wormhole, and back to Erica, well, she would venture out into the barren Terran, and she would realize that the moon's orbit is a flat, ellipse. Again, me sometimes. And it's, Perigi will bring it to it close to the gas giant's thermosphere, and the render at the atmosphere's toxic. And as Erica would continue to search for food, she successfully managed to make some water. Well, now she's got to find a way to fix food. So yeah, how's she gonna do that? I'm sure she'll find a way on account that she managed to fix water, so yeah, she succeeded on that. Well, at one point, she would spot a light in the distance, and meanwhile back on the Enterprise, Uhura would pick up the buoy's faint distress call. However, Spock posists that it could be a signal ghost. In other words, it could be a message that might have come from sometime years ago, and now they're picking it up because, in the case of time, but no, because with what Uhura can sense and tell, yeah. And with the gravimetric refraction preventing them from verifying that, yeah, Erica sent the message after she entered the wormhole, not long after. So, yeah, and Uhura, she suggests that they would send probes to strengthen the connection of the Armageddus. And Pike would then order Number 1 to inform Captain Decker that, the Enterprise will keep its schedule to meet with the Constellation, but with a slight delay with what he specifically says. Yeah, to still stay on track and to still stay on schedule, finding a way to proceed with still trying to find Erica while still staying on that schedule. Good on him. Because, yeah, not just Uhura, but everybody else on the Enterprise. Well, they're not going to give up on Erica. They'll do whatever it takes to rescue Erica as well, and that's good to know. Try their best not to leave behind a fellow officer on board the bridge, and their best helmsman, to pilot the Enterprise, definitely. And especially because, Erica being the best pilot of the Enterprise before, say, Sulu. Alright, so, back to Erica, because, she would then locate a makeshift structure, but it would react with, it reacts with the horror upon recognizing that its returning inhabitant is, in fact, a Gorn. Did we not see that coming? Because obviously she wouldn't be the only one on this moon. Someone else would, and whom else but a Gorn? Of course. Great. And back in the Enterprise and in its Reading room, Lalonde would state that the communications probes had dispatched into the wormhole. They had failed and to conduct any signal. And the deployments may also be the reason that the Opture is shrieking, and, Una would urge the captain to consider the 4,000 colonists on that third planet from, pandemic. But Pike, he assures Uhura he will approve another shuttle mission if she can provide hard data to back it up. Yeah, to make good progress and such. And nothing goes wrong. And coming back to Erica, because, yeah, concealed near the habitat, and, yeah, because Erica, being surprised by the sight of the Gorn, who can blame her, and, yeah, of course, being her opponent, and, because releasing her to capture a carnivorous pit creature, yeah, that tries to pounce on them. And in the science lab on the Enterprise, coming back to the Enterprise, because Uhura would do the navigation's simulations and all that, but they fall short. Yeah. The navigation simulations that she's been trying to do, but they haven't been making any great progress. And Spock would deduce that a successful rescue is statistical improbability. Yeah. However, Spock would support Uhura's continued efforts, because Spock can tell that Uhura's not giving up that easily. And yeah, and we of course don't want to see her give up that easily either. Yeah. Because, of course, we don't want to see anything bad happening to Erica. And by the way, because I'm sure I've brought this up before, and by reviewing Strange New Worlds, because, some of my favorite characters from Strange New Worlds, it's a toss-up between Erica and Lalonde. Of course, I also enjoy the characters, the characters of the younger versions of Spock, Uhura, and now that Scotty stepped in, and of course Kirk, and Pike too, Una being great too, and Captain Battelle. Yeah, definitely, all these characters are fantastic, but definitely, the main characters on the Enterprise, a toss-up between, for me, Erica and Lalonde. I'm just saying. Yeah. And you can let me know which are some of your favorite characters. Well, coming back on the small moon and getting back on point, well, the Gorn would feast on the creature's corpse because, those carnivorous creatures that are on the moon, they're almost like, say, I don't know, to best describe them, those with, a lot of legs, centipedes. Ugh, yeah, something like that. Good way to describe them, and what they represent in this. Yeah. Well, Erica would notice that her counterpart has a serious wound on its leg. Not to mention that the Gorn, did spare Erica, and on account of those, bug-like creatures and all that. And at one point, the Gorn would toss Erica a piece of meat for her to dine on. Well, that's very kind of the Gorn. But more to the Gorn and with what Erica would realize. And later on, and after Erica, she did feast on it. She didn't react to it very positively, but, she of course ended up eating it all. She had something to eat. And hopefully, that settled well with her stomach and her body. Yeah. Well, later on, the Gorn would then be asleep, and Erica would steal the Gorn's comms array in a bid to hail the Enterprise, hopefully. And Erica would then observe an odd light blinking in the sky, and then a sudden seismic disturbance that sends her shuttle plunging into the depths below of the moon. Well, great. Now, how is she supposed to get back home? I mean, even if the shuttlecraft had any, progress to fly again, I mean, on, contrary to, how much damage it has, yeah, but, well, that shuttle's done for. She's not getting off the moon with that. Nope. Well, and then, more carnivores would then emerge and surround her. However, the Gorn, just in time, would manage to protect Erica and take down those carnivore bug creatures. However, with the cost of the Gorn still being injured with, with the leg, another leg injury and all that. Yeah. And coming back to the Enterprise, because Uhura would then present her unorthodox plan to the captain in the science lab, and believing that they must take the Enterprise into the wormhole and establish a stable warp field to wedge the opture open. Yeah, and Uhura would subtly alter the projections for scan capabilities within the anomaly, and tricking the captain into agreeing to the mission, turning it up to, say, 61%. Well, I understand, with her reasonings to do that, And coming back to Ortega's and the Gorn, well, yeah, they did retreat to the habitat, and where the Gorn utilizes a repurposed power source to establish a personal deflector, shield around the structure. And Erica would treat the Gorn's wound with a ground-up crystal paste, and the Gorn would repay her in another serving of the pit monster sushi. And Erica would notice a helmet nearby and believing that the Gorn is also a pilot. And since playing charades isn't the best way of communicating, well, Erica would then modify her tricorder, which is, still functioning, that's good, to act as a rudimentary universal translator, to allow the Gorn to give a yes or no in response. And it actually works. However, it says agree and disagree, And the Gorn would shock Erica with the revelation that it already understands her language. Despite using her tricorder for all that, no, it understands Erica, And even though the Gorn does not speak English, not at all in this episode. And as its species, the Gorn, it did study its enemies in understanding its English. And the Gorn would introduce herself as a female. Nice. Because, Erica would then joke around and, and with her being amazed at the notion that, she's stranded on a flying tombstone and, joking with the Gorn because, they have a slumber party and all that. But then, and Erica would then scratch a makeshift chessboard into the rocks. And, the Gorn would try to teach her fellow pilot a game enjoyed by her species. Nice. It's great to see that by this point, they're starting to get along, like besties or something like that, Then Erica would turn to the Gorn's comms array into the SOS beacon, but it would remain confused by the distant flashes of light in the sky, because, there's something about it that we don't know just yet, but obviously we're going to, later on. And they would both feel as if they're being watched, because, not only is Erica feeling this way, but so is the Gorn. And, because the Gorn would then reveal that her people will perceive her as broken, and Erica would offer to bring the female Gorn back to the Enterprise, and which, unbeknownst to her, Pike, he's actually taking the pilot's chair, flying the ship and all that. What did I say like last time? Because obviously, when it's come to any captain, and that makes their way to the rank of captain, they obviously at some point were taught how to fly a ship and all that. As I've explained before, it's so obvious. So so with Captain Pike piloting toward the wormhole, the Enterprise props the aperture open and detecting the gas giant in its 39% moons on the other end. And as the Enterprise would scan for her, meanwhile Erica would eye for the animatrix light and would question its purpose, and the pit monsters would show up once again, converge on their position, and leading the battery powering the beacon and shield to malfunction, unfortunately. And Erica would brainstorm, and deciding that the collision between the gas giant and the moon's atmospheres, it will cause them to become flammable. And if they use the propellant from the Gorn's thruster tank to ignite part of the planet's atmosphere, then it can create a burning SOS across the planet. And they would harness the heat shield from the Gorn escape pod for protection. Because, the type of material for that Gorn escape pod, because hopefully that will come in handy and protecting them very well. So, Erica, she would encourage the Gorn to, help out on this, because, Erica can't do all of this alone if, the female Gorn doesn't help her. Eventually, the Gorn is convinced and does help out. Erica. And yeah, the Gorn would encourage a forlorn Erica to preserve. And yeah, because with them coming to an agreement and that they are friends, Erica would launch the thruster manual, setting the sky aflame, the entire moon basically. And back on the Enterprise and on the bridge, well, Pike would divulge that he is aware Uhura fuged the numbers for this mission. Nice on you, Captain. Yeah, you somehow knew. Yeah, fuging the numbers for the mission, but, you know, he would have searched for Erica anyway, and that's a good captain right there, definitely. Spock would then pick up an unusual atmospheric eruption on one of the moons, and yeah, and the crew, they would comprehend that, yep, the signal is coming from Erica, because with them realizing that Erica would do something like this, you know, just be crazy to do something like this, and in a good way, yeah. And, well, it wouldn't take too long for Lalonde and some other crewmen to beam down to the moon's surface, and, yeah, because luckily, Erica and that female Gorn, they did survive. However, her reaction to seeing the Gorn right behind Erica, well, this would cause her and the others of the landing party to open fire. And I should have seen this coming. It's so obvious that something like this was going to happen. And it does remind me of that one episode of Jerry Anderson's UFO where, and that's another one too, where, yeah, because if you remember and have seen Jerry Anderson's UFO, one episode where Paul Foster is being held hostage by an alien on the moon base, you know, very far away on the moon, but eventually Foster and that alien would come to Men's and work together, but unfortunately, you know, Paul Foster wasn't able to warn the others on the moon base that the alien is with him, and yeah, in that episode, just like, oh, that's another one, and that's a good comparison right there. Ugh. Yeah, it sucks when stuff like that happens, you know, in the realm of science fiction. In the case of what happened in that episode of UFO and in this, because, yeah, you know, Erica just, you know, shouting no, and just how devastated it is for her to see that they've opened fire on, you know, her friend, whom is a Gorn, you know? Because, yeah, obviously, Erica could not have imagined that she would become a friend to a Gorn and, you know, being a female Gorn. And by the way, because here's the thing. There have been female Gorns before. That was actually introduced in the Star Trek video game that came out around the time when Star Trek Into Darkness came out. Star Trek the video game where, yeah, it incorporated the Gorn, and that being in the Kelvin timeline, of course. And that was where, yeah, they then started to incorporate and bring in female Gorns, which hadn't been done at that time, but it's a good thing it did. Yeah. So nice to see that, yeah, there's both male and female Gorns. And of course, both of them being, you know, tough warriors and all that, as that's what the Gorn is, you know, being very smart and intelligent with weapons and ships and all that. Well, you know, calling out in anguish to the point of the light that has been watching all along, because Erica's just had enough and wants an answer, like, who are you and what is your business and all that. Well, then Lalonde would request all of them to beam out, but the entire scene, besides Erica, freezes. What's going on here, I wonder? Well, that is when Erica would be introduced and greeted, yeah, by this being, which being a Metrone. Yeah, we see the Metrones. We haven't seen the Metrones in, you know, such a long time, since Arena. Yeah, and technically the same goes for the Gorn, but, you know, well, I mean, the Gorn, they did appear in Enterprise at one point, then officially back in Strange New Worlds, so, yeah. And besides the Star Trek video game, as I just mentioned, just, you know. But, yeah, so the Metrone appearing and having inhabited this region of space since before humanity, according to that one Metrone, and, yeah, walked upright, and the Metrones were curious about the humans and the Gorn, and deeming them to be two barbaric species determined to destroy the other, and the Metrone force them together with a need to survive as an experiment, and the Metron would explain to Erica that the Gorn kept her alive because it was lonely, and while Erica managed to work past her pain and trauma, yeah, with what happened early on this season. And the Metron would see this as a helpful development. However, in the case of Erica, just being furious, and all that, fury is not quelled, and yeah, because she's not quite happy with the Metron, and Lalonde's violent response to the Gorn has caused the Metrons to realize that they need more data to determine if the human and Gorn will ever find peace, if ever one day they might. Yeah, possibly. And the Metron would then state to Erica that, well, Erica will not remember him, and that the Metrons, might need to reset the Federation's perception of the Gorn, as well as all of Erica's, will recall is the time she spent bonding with the Gorn, and the Metron would then wave his hand and allow the beam up to resume. So, yeah. And yeah, talk about, at the time and setting of this, before what would happen in the events of Arena. I tell you, because the Metron and their fascination with the humans and the Gorn. Yeah, nice. Then, yeah, back on the Enterprise. Everything is calm and all that, and Erica, being safe and sound, back on board, well, in her quarters, she would express her appreciation for Uhura's dedication to finding her as a true friend. Yeah. And Erica knows that, the Gorn saved her, still remembering that, and describing both the Gorn and Lalonde as her friends. And the lieutenant would admit that she doesn't know how to process that, but Uhura would then suggest that they both wanted to protect her, and Uhura would then does recommend that Erica remember the Gorn after Uhura leaves. Well, yeah, Erica would then turn to look at a piece she kept from the Gorn, game board, and displayed on a shelf alongside with the other precious memories and mementos. Yeah. And of course, obviously, some of them, like being, say, on account of her brother and family and all that. Of course, just, yeah. Man, I tell ya, the 9th episode of Season 3 of Strange New Worlds, that was excellent. Yeah, it was fantastic. What the 9th and second to last episode had to offer, yeah, Terrarium, it was great, to continue on with what's going on with Erica at times throughout this season, and ever since what happened to her with the Gorn and such, yeah, and with what this episode does, and where she comes to men's with a Gorn and all that, and befriending a female Gorn, just like, yeah, the adventure in this episode that takes Erica on and with the female Gorn, and with that, the Enterprise crew, especially Uhura, doing whatever they can to try to locate Erica, and eventually they would, yeah, and with the appearance of the Metron, that was really great too. And also, the two cast members in this episode, yeah, the body performance of the Gorn being played by Warren Scherer, yeah, and the Metron being played by Darish Zada. I hope I got his full name right, but again, you know me sometimes. And by the way, the voice of the Metron, well, very different to, say, the Metron in the Arena episode, where, the Metron is kind of changing voices at times. Not that I'm complaining, but that's very interesting. But anyways, just need I go on? Overall, Terrarium was well executed, centering on Erica and also on Uhura, but, mainly Erica, and, with how Erica feels about this one Gorn and all that, just, fantastic. Those kind of episodes, as I explained early on, they can be good. Definitely. And as long as they're written well. And, the realm of science fiction, whatever the case. Yeah. Just again, Terrarium, the 9th/second to last episode of Season 3 of Strange New Worlds, well executed. All right. Now, with episode 9 out of the way, now we come to the 10th and last episode of Season 3 of Strange New Worlds, which being titled New Life and New Civilizations. All right, description / the story. When an ancient and evil alien force resurfaces, Pike must make a difficult decision to stop it from spreading. Okay, here we go. Diving in / breaking down the 10th and final episode of Season 3. Yeah, alright, so the start of the episode, well, Captain Mary Battelle beaming back on board the Enterprise on account of the position she was given. And yeah, because with, her return and with, again, the active duty as the new director of the Starfleet Judge Acovate General's office. Yeah. Captain Pike bringing her to his cabin / his quarters, and where the rest of the crew join in a celebration of Patel's promotion, and Scotty coming in, and he walks in with his own, wardrobe, with a kilt and all that. Well, I mean, he is Scottish, so, of course he would have to wear something Scottish-related. It's not like they give him a hard time, just because, he's Scottish, Scottish people wearing that kind of stuff for a special tradition in the case of this celebration that's going on. It's nice to see with everyone having a great time and getting together and such, yeah. And, with the Enterprise refining Battelle back to Earth for her promotion ceremony, well, at one point, Nurse Chapel would excuse herself for an incoming communication with her boyfriend, Dr. Roger Corby, and whom is on an expedition in the distant Baydate system, yeah. And Spock would bring up about Kali Kashana, yeah, which being a phrase that the Vesda spoke during its battle with Battelle, and as it is nearly identical to the name of the city that Corby is visiting on the Skygowan, yeah. And which, yeah, being built on the belief that the Vesda were gods, and the Skygowan city boasts spiritual high chambers and floating above its surface. And after establishing trust with the High Cleric Zephyrus, well, Dr. Corby would transport to the chamber's upper level. That's pretty cool with, how they do their transportations, going from upstairs and all that. They don't require stairs, apparently. Well, yeah, in the chamber's upper level, in a bid to understand what he encountered on Vadia 6 and all, Vadia 9 and all that, yeah, as well as the Vesda's so-called immortality. Well, back on the Enterprise, in sickbay, Scotty would prepare to shut down the medical transporter so he can run a diagnostic sweep. But he would notice an odd residual pattern, geometrics, yeah, on Skygowan. Both him, Chapel, and Dr. Joseph, yeah. And the High Cleric states that the Zephyrus has come to deliver them to the gods. That can't be good. And back in sickbay, well, a human pattern would belong to Ensign Gamble and reconstructed from emergency backups and is discovered to have left the ship. He left out of nowhere with nobody noticing. And yeah, and in the high chamber, Zephyrus would turn to reveal that he has taken Gamble's form. Once again, Gamble, whom... Again, poor Gamble, he can't catch a break. He didn't deserve this with what happened to him early on. But with Gamble and with his destiny in this episode, it is what it is, yeah. Well, then Pike's senior officers would converse in the ready room where they assume that the activation of Corby's emergency transponder is connected to the Vesda's whereabouts, and the Skygowan trades with the Orions, and has a population larger hostile to the Federation. And so Pike would plan to dispatch a covert tactical landing party, and giving her negative reaction to the Vesda, well, Battelle would feel the need to be on the mission as well, and sensing that she is being pulled towards her destiny, because they talk about it, her and Pike, and while she's in the gymnasium, yeah. Well, meanwhile, number one, Dr. Joseph, because they're on the planet as well as Chapel and Lalonde in disguise to blend in with the crowd. Well, they would distract the guards at the chamber, which being the entrance to the Sky Gowan up top. And so Lalonde can use the Vulcan nerve pinch on them. Yeah, because that's what she does, thanks to Spock, because, with their dancing lessons and all that. And speaking of Spock, because both Spock and Scotty, they would consult with Commander Pelia and Lieutenant George Sam Kirk, about the Vesda's exploitation of their interdimensional space, and which allegedly folds along ley lines, and including one that leads right to the Sky Gowan. And Scotty would summarize that these lanes could be bus routes and all that, for the interdimensional travel. And if true, well, the Vesda could access the Vadia 9 prison from across the deep space and unleash its brethren on Sky Gowan, and disaster striking, basically, which is not good. Well, then Corby, Dr. Corby, because he would reunite with Chapel in the High Chamber, because, Corby said that they shouldn't have come, but, well, of course they had to, and explaining that some of the people on the planet, well, they worship the Vesda as if, he's a god, and that being the Vesda that's taking over, poor Gamble, and the Vesda's followers, well, they would assemble in the city, voluntarily stabbing their eyes. Golly. To think they go along with this. Well, of course, they'll do anything to worship a god like that. Golly. And then at one point, Captain Kirk would be in contact with Pike to inform him that the USS Farragut is on its way to assist the Enterprise. And Ensign Uhura would suggest that the away team try to trap the Vesta in one of the orbs from the 10th planet and all that. And Corby would think more continent orbs exist behind the altar, and which shockingly displays a verse in Swahili that describes Dr. Joseph's past. Yeah, because of course Uhura can read Swahili and all that. And by the way, with Kirk and those on the Farragut assisting the Enterprise, well, this especially has to do with the captain of the Farragut, giving the Enterprise a big favor, because, in return, because the Enterprise saved her life and the entire crew of the Farragut. So, yeah. Well, but continuing, because, Dr. Joseph, delivering Gamble to the Vesta that took his body, well, the Doctor would theorize that being here is his destiny. He has to be here and such. And the altar scans would scan, the altar would scan Joseph's face, and it would open the door for him, and, the Vesta, well, it at one point would leap out and take the Doctor, and along with him, through the portal into the 10th planet's prison, the same, location that we had seen before previously. And the Vesta would then lash out at the Beholder, which being this statuic figure which has kept the inmates from escaping. But however, at one point, we would come back to Batel, whom reacts to the strike that the Vesta does to the statue and such. And with her still being on the Enterprise, and her eyes would start to glow. Yeah, that's very different, and whatever this could mean. And Batel's life signs, according to Chapel, are identical to the bioscan taken of the Beholder, and indicating that she is the statue. What a twist, right? Which, of course, being on the 10th planet. And, and Joseph, back there in the prison, would realize that the Vesta needs him alive to get out of the prison, because, the Vesta is not going to kill Joseph and all that. And, his quick-to-struggle results in the Vesta falling into another doorway. And meanwhile, back in sickbay on the Enterprise, well, Batel would presume that her encounters with the Gorn, the Emproys, Una's Illyrian blood, and the Chimera Blossom have altered her. All of those have altered her, and factoring in the idea that the Vesda are evil incarnate and the nature impenitent responses. Yeah, and Batel would submit that by hybridizing her, she has taken on the adoptive characteristics of the races that have faced such evil, and since the interdimensional space can place effect before cause, and Batel, could be the beholder, and that has stood century for millennium. And if true, well, she must defeat the Vesta, then stay behind to guard the prison and all that. And, because this decision and just, like, how Pike feels about this and the talk that Batel and Pike have, man, I tell you, because, because with the cast members themselves, Anson Mount and Melaine Scrofano, they're always fantastic as those two characters. Pike and Batel's chemistry, the love/romance they have with each other, it's really great. I've enjoyed them as a couple, and with what was going on and up to this episode, it's obvious that something like this is coming up. It's going to, And besides, because the recap of the 10th episode and all that, because it does bring up, like, say, Pike accepting his fate, because what happens to him, and when we would see him in that two-parter of season 1 of the original series, and where he ends up with Vina, because that's his destiny. Stuff like that, because I tell ya, for me, just no words to describe, because, and the fact, because, God, Strange New Worlds has to stick with canon and up to the events of the original series, and in the case of, say, Pike. So, Anyways. Alright, but continuing on. So, a power equivalent to the Earth's sun is required to open the Skygowan portal, but a starship's focused phaser blast can only generate half of that. So with two ships firing phaser streams of anti-portions in perfect centroidicy, will be necessary. So that's the good option that there is to open that. So Spock, he would meet with Kirk in the port galley, and the two pilots must operate together, and Spock wishing to conduct a Vulcan mind meld that will allow he and Kirk to share a consciousness, and Kirk, he requests Spock not to judge a memory which involves Orion's second moon. I wonder what that's about. Because, either way, with the whole thing of the Vulcan mind meld, Spock's going to see everything in Kirk's mind. So, that's how it's done with the mind meld. So, and in fact, even Kirk invites Spock to call him Jim. So that would be the beginning of where, at times, Spock calls him Jim. Nice. So, with the mind meld thing happening, and linking himself with Kirk, my mind to your mind and all that, both of them would soon take the helms of the Enterprise and the Farragut, respectively, and they're speaking at the same time with what they're doing, so And the two starships would coordinate their target lock, together, kind of flipped upside down and all that. One of them's upside down, but, with them rotating. And the two would strike at the Skygowan altar and opening its portal for Batel and Pike. And thus they would enter into it, step foot into the prison, and just as the Vesta breaks out of its doorway and attacks, and Joseph still being there, he's all right, Pike would look on, and Batel's hands would start to glow, and suddenly, the two captains are celebrating their 2-year anniversary, because, out of nowhere, we now see Pike and Batel, just, in a different reality. Where they're home on Earth, and again, as I just said, they're celebrating their 2-year anniversary. And Batel, well, because right here, they're engaged. So Batel would gift, Pike, which, being her fiance, a apron, but a knock at the door would remind Pike that Admiral Robert April wants to talk to him into training cadets at Starfleet Academy. Also, because Pike even gave Batel a gift as well. So, in fact, when they both said that, we don't do gifts, but, they do anyways. Then in the next moment, well, the couple is now married, and now they have a child of their own, a daughter. And redying for Pike's assignment to the Lucas, a Class J training vessel, that they expect will be the scene of his long-awaited accident. And there's another knock at the door, and Battelle now finds Pike returning from the training exercise. And as the baffle plate never ruptured, it never did. Nope, because Pike never sustained any injuries. He's all right. He's in one piece, and that's good to see. Yeah, because, with it not giving him any injuries, Battelle would then explain that the thought of losing him gave her the power to open the fabric of space and time to fight the Vesda. And perhaps that reset everything. Yeah, possibly. Yeah. Then Pike would see a shooting star and another knock occurs, and then the captain's next experience involves their adult daughter, their daughter name being Juliet, bringing a guest from the Daystrom Institute to dinner that turns out to be Admiral April's son, which be named Elijah. Hey, we share the same name. Hey, I like that. There's a character that shares the same name of me in Star Trek. And they also do call him Eli for short. And by the way, adult Juliet being played by Anna Morodin. Hope I got her last name right, but yeah. And Elijah April being played by Eric Miracle. Yeah, I think, because I'm pretty sure I got the last name right. But anyways. Also, a few other cast members, like a cultist being played by Cassandra Guther, her, and a Skygowan villager, number 19, being uncreditedly being played by Sandy E. Scott. Yeah, only one cast member that's uncredited, and, just, of course, wanted to point that out. But yeah, but like I just said, it's really cool that there's a character in Star Trek. Well, technically, this isn't the first time, because now I remember, because good thing I do, because technically, in the one episode of Next Generation, the Festival of Datas, there is a character named Eli, so that's two characters now, or if not, because I've got to check again, where, some characters in the realm of Star Trek that share the same name as me. Because if you recall in the Festival of Datas, in the holodeck program of the Wild Wild West, and where Worf is sheriff, one of the bad guys in that holodeck program is named Eli, so, anyways. All right, but continuing on, because, with meeting with Admiral April's son, Elijah, well, Juliet would credit her success to advice from Uncle Sock. Because apparently that's what she named her uncle, at a young age, which, of course, being Spock. And Spock has liked that name, that nickname that Juliet, gave him and such. And the young couple, being present, and with, most prominently Elijah, with them being there, is actually there to get Battelle and both of them, Battelle and Pike's blessings for their engagement. And I should have seen that coming. That's sweet. And technically Pike knew this, but not Battelle. That's interesting. Usually that's the other way around, right? The mother would kind of know before the dad, just with however it works, it's understandable, just with whatever goes on in situations like that. Yeah, anyways. But then there would be another knock on the door, and then what we would see next is Pike and Battelle now as an elderly couple, and Pike would sit by Battelle's bedside in her final moments. And she would assure him that she'll always be with him as another shooting star traverses the sky and all that. Yeah. And Battelle would also state that, this lifetime has been a gift, and she needed to have this experience in order to say goodbye. And Pike, and when Battelle tells him to, go answer the door, he would. And the Vesda is there, and finding himself back in the present alongside with Battelle on the prison on the 10th planet, and the Vesda would free his brethren, but Batel stepping in and drawing upon her inner light and the love she feels to imprison the Vesta and his comrades once again. And Batel, well, she would transform into the Beholder statue, assuming her watch over the inmates. Yeah. And that's the end of Batel. That's the last we see of her, at least for now, because, yeah, very powerful, touching moment. When you say so, I think, just like, golly. And just like, yeah, because with how far Pike and Batel had come a long way, just, I tell you, it's very powerful. That kind of stuff, just, you know, the whole thing of romance, love stories and all that. Well, then, after that, well, yeah, as the people of the Sky Gowan, they recover from Vesda's influence. And by the way, just right after what Batel did, the next shot we would see of the Enterprise and the Farragut flying over the planet's orbit and all that, it's done in the same style as it is in the original series. You know, the way the shots of the Enterprise are flying around a planet. Nice. I love that. That's really cool they did that. Yeah. Well, yeah, again, with them recovering and all that, Chapel would bid farewell to Dr. Corby again and for now. And yeah, because they're in the transporter room, and Corby would hand her a scan containing star maps of areas of the Federation that have never been explored yet. And as for Spock and Kirk, well, we see them once more in the port galley. They're playing three-dimensional chess, and they're sharing information that they learned during the mind meld and agreeing to continue their game until the day comes when they might one day end up serving on the same ship. And we, of course, know that. Yeah. We Trekkers know that that's for sure gonna happen. And yeah, Spock would then leave alongside with Lalonde when she steps in for another dance lesson, which Kirk knew because of the mind meld. What did I say early on? And Sam would then step in and take a seat alongside with his brother Jim. Yep, nice to see both brothers sharing a moment. Then, the last stuff we see in this episode, well, a moment where number one / Una would commiserate with, with Pike in his quarters, sharing a drink and all that. And, well, Pike, he would just glance at his cooking apron, and as his crew goes about their duties and having a good time when off duty, and also finding joy in each other's company. Yeah, that too. And Pike would emphasize that the memory is real as the present, and no one we have ever loved is truly gone. Pure facts right there. With that speech that Pike gives, like, it's well said, well executed. Then finally, the last scene we get, Pike would finally return on the bridge, and Spock, well, he would relay that Corby's Sky Gowan research has revealed a large number of uncharted planets, enough for a 5-year mission. Yeah. And Pike, well, he would glimpse a shooting star outside of the view screen, like those he saw in his lifetime with Batel. Yep. And remarking that this is a new future, filled with whatever kind of adventure they want. And Pike, well, he allows Erica to set a course and warp away as fast as she'd like to go. Yeah, just, he doesn't care, just gonna let her go as fast as she'll go with driving the Enterprise. And a beautiful shot where the Enterprise goes into warp, just, man, what a great way for that to end off. Definitely. Yeah, so, that's that. Yeah, the 10th and final episode of Season 3 of Strange New Worlds. It did not disappoint. Yeah. Episode 10, New Life and New Civilizations. What a hell of a way for this third season to end off. Where some of these characters come to, like most prominently Gamble, sadly, but also Batel. The last moments in this episode for Pike and Batel, the life that, maybe possibly they could have had, but sadly was not really meant to be. No. And, the fact that, we see them having a daughter that they never had, Juliet, and getting appearance of Robert April's son, Elijah, that was great. Everything that goes on with the Vestas, and, the last time we see the Vestas, and when they're taken down thanks to Batel keeping them hostage and all that, and with everything else that goes on in the 10th and final episode from beginning to end, and with the assistance of Kirk, those on the Farragut, everything else that's going on, just like, oh, man. And great chemistry from these characters, like, say Spock and Kirk, and it would just be the beginning of what would come next for Kirk and Spock, Spock calling Kirk Jim, and one day they will work together on the same starship, which coincidentally, it's the starship that they are on board. Yeah. Yeah, just need I go on. Just like, episode 10, the 10th and final episode of season 3 of Strange New Worlds, New Life and New Civilizations. It was an excellent final episode. Definitely. And yeah, the last 2 episodes, they were both fantastic. With what the last 2 episodes of Season 3 had to offer, they were fantastic. The entirety of Season 3 was a really good season. I had a great time with this season. This season had a great batch of episodes with what each of them had to offer. The connections and what would happen next very later on in the show, in the 3rd season, it was well executed. Some great moments that happened here and there, some downs and falls and all that, the emotional moments, everything that's going on, like more we get of, say, the Gorn, the Vestas, and, well, with what goes on with, like, say, each Gamble and Batel, and the journey's end for Batel, and the romance between Batel and Pike, and the more we get of Kirk, and as, the friendships would build with Kirk and the Enterprise crew, and most prominently Spock, just need I go on. Everything that Season 3 had to offer was fantastic. And I'm giving Season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, well, why not? 10 out of 10 stars. Yes, 10 out of 10 stars for the 3rd season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And what about you guys? What did you think of the 3rd season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds? Would it be one of your current favorite seasons of Strange New Worlds? Which of these episodes did you enjoy the most? Your top 5 favorite episodes, I guess, And what did you think of the last 2 episodes, the last remaining 2 episodes of the 3rd season, what they had to offer, and if you had a great time watching them, and so on. Just, again, need I go on? Just, again, overall, what did you think of the 3rd season of Strange New Worlds in a whole, with what all I've had to say, and with the last 2 episodes? Yeah, my review and all that? Yeah, just what did you think of my 4th and final part review? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. And so, guys, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review, my 4th and final part review of Season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. The last 2 episodes, Episode 9, Terrarium, and Episode 10, New Life and New Civilizations. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I will see you guys in the next video / review. Take care, and until the 4th season of Strange New Worlds, peace out. And for once more, live long and prosper.